Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into your sandals and step into the dust of ancient Rome, just as the sun cracks the skyline and the streets of the empire groan into motion. You're 17, lean from farm work, and already dreaming of fame, pay, and maybe a villa someday. The smell of hot bread drifts from a bakery, and somewhere, a butcher's shouting at a goat. Today's the day you sign your name to the greatest machine in world history, the Roman army. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's always wild to see where you all are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tighten the belt around your tunic. It's scratchy, but it's the only clean one you've got. Outside, the recruiting tent looms like a storm cloud. You're not alone. Other boys, some just as nervous, some trying too hard to look tough, shuffle forward. They come from dusty villages, noisy cities, and conquered lands with names you can't pronounce. An officer scans the group, his eyes as sharp as a hawk's. No armor yet, just that red sash and a scroll he unrolls like it might bite him. He calls names. Your stomach flips when he says yours. Step forward, he barks. And just like that, you're in. A short speech follows, something about loyalty to the emperor, protecting Rome, upholding the laws of the gods, blah blah. You hear every third word because all you can focus on is the sharp bronze blade on the table. That's the oath knife. You slice your palm, lightly, don't be dramatic, and press your hand to the standard, a silver eagle perched high above. The blood seals the deal. You're no longer just some kid with strong arms and a dream. You're property of the empire. That's when you realize what you've done. No turning back now. 25 years. That's how long your contract is. And if you're lucky, you'll get a farm and a pension at the end. If not, well, bones turn to dust fast in enemy soil. Fun fact, Roman recruiters sometimes exaggerated benefits, free land, they'd promise, or women in Gaul love soldiers, and yes, that was basically state-approved catfishing. Historians still argue whether these mass enlistments were truly voluntary or subtly coerced by poverty and local pressure. Either way, you're in. Welcome to the Roman army. Your mother would cry if she saw you now. But she's not here. Wake the next morning before the sun, stomach tight and feet already sore, and you haven't even moved yet. The camp's alive with motion, boots thud, orders bark, and someone's already shouting in Greek. You barely had time to sleep on the straw-stuffed sack they call a mattress, and now you're being herded like cattle toward another ritual. The Optio, second in command and professional buzzkill, snaps his fingers and waves you forward. Today, you swear your sacramentum, the military oath that binds you to Rome more tightly than your own family ever did. It's not just a raise your right hand and repeat after me situation. This vow is spiritual superglue. You're promising, out loud, in front of gods, witnesses, and a stone-faced centurion, that you'll never desert, never disobey, and always fight for the emperor, even if he's the kind who thinks marrying a horse is a good policy move. Your voice shakes a little as you speak the Latin words. Everyone's does. Even that hulking dude from Hispania who looks like he eats raw boars for fun. The centurion watches without blinking. You get the sense that he remembers every face, every word. You mess up your lines, you get flogged. Simple. Then, with surprising formality, you're handed your first Roman pay token. Not real coins, those come later, but a stamped bronze disc showing you're now on the payroll. Theoretically. You won't see any actual money until after your first campaign. Or second. Or, maybe never. The army has a strange sense of accounting. Still, there's pride in your chest. You're now Legion. The Empire recognizes you. Kind of. But also owns you. Fun fact, the sacramentum wasn't just a formality, it was a sacred act believed to curse deserters and traitors with divine punishment. That's right, if the army didn't catch you, Jupiter probably would. The rest of the day is a blur of barking commands and blisters. You're herded into ranks again, told to repeat basic phrases, salute this way, turn that way, stand still even when ants crawl up your legs. The officer's voice is endless, his tone a mix of exhaustion and barely veiled hatred for your clumsiness. Your old name doesn't matter anymore. You're not Marcus or Quintus or Wadavirius. You're just, new recruit. One of hundreds. A blood oath's nice, but your value now is measured in how fast you learn and how little you complain. Historians still argue whether the sacramentum was inspired more by Roman religion or military pragmatism, but either way, it worked. Thousands of terrified teenagers like you became some of the most feared soldiers the world has ever known. So you swallow your fear, stiffen your spine, and try not to look like you're going to pass out. The Empire just welcomed you with open arms. You're still rubbing your eyes when the Centurion bellows something about brotherhood and formation. You don't catch most of it, thanks to the guy next to you humming what sounds like a lullaby from Carthage. Turns out, he's not humming, he's praying. And he's not from anywhere you've even heard of. Welcome to your new family, 80 men, give or take, all lumped together into what's called a centuria. Century sounds like 100, but don't let that fool you. Math in the Roman army has a loose relationship with reality, just like their idea of vacation time. There's Lucius, the street rat from Neapolis with a grin that probably got him out of trouble more than once. Next to him is Titus, a red-haired brute from northern Gaul who calls wine sour water. You swear he's at least half tree. Then there's skinny Kafiri from Egypt, who speaks Latin like it's a curse and constantly fingers a small amulet you're pretty sure isn't regulation. Somehow, these guys, and dozens more, are your brothers now. The smells alone are enough to make your eyes water. Sweat, old leather, garlic breath, and, is that goat? Someone definitely brought a goat. Or recently sat on one. You try small talk. First time, you ask a guy cleaning his nails with what might be a tooth. He shrugs. Second. Got kicked out before. Tried to sell a statue of Mars as an authentic god fragment. Charming. Despite the stench and awkward silences, there's something comforting in the shared confusion. No one knows exactly what's coming. Everyone's scared. Except for the guy who sleeps with his eyes open, don't trust him. Ever. At night, you're lumped together in a cramped barracks with zero privacy and maximum snoring. Someone starts singing about a girl in Antioch. Another curses at the rats. But you all laugh when one of the newer guys tries to use a helmet as a chamber pot. Mistake number 1. Fun fact, legionaries came from every corner of the empire. Rome was all about variety, as long as you bled the same color and marched in step. Historians still argue whether the camaraderie was truly genuine or just survival instinct, but either way, it worked. Roman soldiers often formed lifelong bonds, stronger than anything back home. As you drift off to sleep, the barracks full of groaning, whispering strangers, you realize something strange. These aren't just strangers anymore. You're in the same mud, marching under the same sun, and facing the same terrifying future. Congratulations. You've just made 80 new best friends. The next morning, whether you want them catapult stone to the face. Before the sun even thinks about rising, the Optio barges in, yelling something about presentation. You're barely upright before you're being shoved into line again, this time in front of a makeshift barber wielding what looks suspiciously like a sheep shear. You try to explain that your hair is already short. He grunts, snips once, and suddenly your scalp feels like it's been kissed by winter. The Roman army believes individuality is dangerous, so your curls, your sideburns, your charming village mop, gone. Everyone ends up with the same lumpy, awkward buzz cut that screams, congratulations, you belong to the machine now. Oh, and your name? Also, gone. Sort of. Your birth name still exists on some wax tablet in a dusty office, but from now on, the Centurion just calls you by your spot in line or a new nickname based on your worst mistake so far. Slipped during formation? Your tumble. Stuttered when swearing the oath? Mumble. It's democratic, in a cruel kind of way. Then come the boots, *Caligy*, heavy-soled sandals with iron studs that look like they were designed for stomping grapes and enemies. They don't come in sizes. They come in close enough. You're told to break them in. That's code for bleed into them until they fit. You're handed a tunic that smells like it's already been through 3 campaigns and a thick leather belt with little bronze discs dangling off it. They jingle when you walk, making stealth a bit of a joke, but the Romans believe the noise builds confidence. Right now, it just builds blisters. Next up, blister's best friend, marching. Endless, punishing marching. Your units marched 10 miles before breakfast. You don't even know where you're going. No one does. Doesn't matter. The point isn't getting there, it's proving you can. Fun fact. Roman soldiers trained in heavy wooden weapons that were intentionally twice the weight of real ones to build strength and discipline. Think boot camp, but with more splinters. Historians still argue whether the brutal training was about efficiency or pure control, but one thing's clear, they wanted to see what broke first, your will or your feet. By the end of the day, you've got a cracked heel, 2 fewer toenails, and a nickname you'll never shake. You lie awake in your bunk, feet throbbing, trying to remember what it was like to walk without sounding like a one-man percussion section. But hey, your haircut is even, your name is legendary, in a bad way, and your sandals squeak with authority. You, my friend, are becoming a Roman soldier. You're still picking leather splinters out of your toes when training shifts into something even more delightful, formation drills. If you thought marching was bad, wait until you're expected to do it while keeping perfect lockstep, holding a 10-pound shield, and pretending the guy next to you isn't muttering curses in a dialect you've never heard. Testudo, the Centurion yells. That's the tortoise formation. Shields up, front, sides, top, everywhere. You're supposed to move like one massive armored creature. In reality, your shield slips, the guy behind you cracks you on the head, and someone in the back starts yelling, "My eye," over and over. Flawless start. But the Centurion? Not impressed. He walks through the lines with a vine staff, smacking legs, backs, and the occasional ego. Tighter, he shouts. Shields kiss. If you can see daylight, you're already dead. And so you adjust. Over and over. Arms trembling, sweat pouring, breath shallow. You're not fighting anyone yet. Just geometry and gravity. And losing. Eventually, the rhythm clicks. Your shields thud in unison. Your feet march as one. You feel something shift in your chest, like you're part of a single body. One muscle. One mind. It's weirdly satisfying. That is, until the Optio hurls a dummy javelin straight at your face. Keep alert, he barks, as it bounces off your helmet. Everyone laughs. Even you, a little. That was actually a decent throw. Then comes test combat, wooden swords, dull spears, padded tunics. The goal? Don't die. Also, don't hit too hard. Spoiler, everyone hits too hard. It's a blur of splinters, bruises, and the sound of grown men grunting like hogs. You wince when you take a blow to the ribs, but you also land one, clean, right on the Optio's knee. He doesn't say a word. Just nods once. You think that's approval. Or he's plotting revenge. Could go either way. Fun fact. Roman formation drills were so precise that soldiers could reportedly build a defensive wall in under 20 minutes, and yes, during combat if needed. Instant fortress, just add stress. Historians still argue whether the legendary discipline of the legions was natural or beaten into them, though most agree, it wasn't optional. That night, you sleep deeply for the first time in weeks. Not because you're comfortable, far from it, but because you're exhausted down to your bones. You dream of marching. Of shields. Of testudo formations where no one messes up. You wake up sore, bruised, and weirdly proud. You didn't collapse. You didn't quit. You just became part of something terrifyingly efficient. The Roman army doesn't just train your body, it rewires your soul. Something that might be bread or might be last week's stew reheated enough to qualify as breakfast. Your muscles ache in new places. Your hands, once useful for picking olives or petting goats, are now red with calluses. You're almost getting used to it, that relentless Roman rhythm. Almost. Today brings your first taste of construction duty, which, contrary to what you hoped, does not mean fixing a loose roof tile or painting a cheerful mural. Nope. It means digging. 4 hours. In full gear. In the blazing sun. Why? Because if Rome loves anything more than conquering, it's building stuff while conquering. You and your cohort are marched out to a flat field and handed tools, spades, picks, and something that looks like it belonged to a barbarian dentist. The order is clear: dig a defensive trench around the new camp perimeter. 2 meters deep. 2 meters wide. Don't stop until your hands bleed, or preferably just before. A veteran walks by and smirks. Only 20 more years of this, he says. You don't know if he's joking. He doesn't seem like he knows either. As the hours drag on, you notice something weird: you're not the only one quietly humming. Everyone is. Different tunes, different tempos, but there's a rhythm to the misery. It's almost meditative. Dig, breathe, heave, swear, repeat. Then the engineers arrive. Not with blueprints, but with ropes and sticks. Roman engineering isn't flashy. It's precise. They pace out distances using knotted cords and plant stakes to mark where your walls and gates should be. You marvel, not because it's complex, but because it works. It always works. Fun fact: Roman soldiers weren't just fighters, they were skilled laborers. They built roads, forts, bridges, and siege weapons. The legions were basically ancient military construction hybrids. Historians still argue whether the constant building was for defense or to keep the soldiers too exhausted to rebel. Probably both. Rome was efficient like that. At midday, a water break feels like the gods themselves have smiled upon you. You gulp from your leather flask like it's the finest Falernian wine. The centurion passes by. You missed a rock, he says. You stare at the boulder half buried in your trench and wonder if you could roll it into his tent later. As the sun dips low, the trench finally takes shape. It's ugly, uneven, and smells faintly of all your suffering. But it's a start. Tomorrow, you'll reinforce it with sharpened stakes. The day after that? Maybe walls. Maybe gates. Maybe just more digging. You don't ask anymore. Evening falls, but the camp doesn't slow. Torches flicker like fireflies, casting long shadows over tents pitched hastily on dusty ground. You slump against your pack, muscles screaming in a language you don't understand but definitely want to ignore. The centurion calls a meeting. Everyone shuffles forward, curious and nervous. Today, you learn about Roman weapons, not just the shiny gladius you'll eventually carry, but the whole terrifying arsenal designed to turn foes into smear marks on the battlefield. First up, the pilum, a heavy javelin designed to penetrate enemy shields and then bend so it can't be thrown back. Fancy, right? You get a crude wooden one, and the smith says to treat it like a baby, fragile but deadly. You immediately drop yours. Oops. Then there's the scutum, the massive curved shield that's more fortress than defense. It's awkward at first, like hugging a giant turtle shell, but you'll learn to love it, or at least tolerate it. The gladius, the short stabbing sword, is the pride of the Legionnaire. Its design makes it perfect for the close-quarters combat Rome often fought. You can almost hear the silent threat behind the word, stab. While the instructors drone on, you notice a peculiar item poking from a crate, something resembling a wooden snake with metal teeth. Turns out, it's a chiroballistra, a kind of ancient crossbow. Its accuracy is impressive, but its rate of fire? Not so much. Fun fact, some soldiers believed carrying a bit of crocodile dung would protect them from sunburn and disease. Yeah, you read that right. Hygiene in the legions was inventive. Historians still argue whether the average legionary actually mastered all these weapons or if specialized troops handled the fancy stuff, but knowing your basics was definitely mandatory. After the lecture, you and your squad try handling the gear. You're surprised how heavy and clumsy it all feels. Someone accidentally pokes a hole in the tent with a pilum. The smith isn't amused. As night deepens, you find yourself staring at the gladius on the table. It's simple, sharp, and terrifying. This sword will be your closest companion for years to come, whether you like it or not. You wonder what your first fight will feel like. Exciting? Terrifying? Or just another day of scraping survival from chaos? Either way, your hands ache, your feet bleed, and you're already dreaming of that crisp haze, and you trudge to the training ground where today's education, is about drills with the gladius. It's not just swinging a sword around, it's a dance, a deadly ballet designed to kill fast and keep you alive. Your instructor, a grizzled veteran with scars that read like a horror novel, demonstrates the thrust, not slash, technique. You try to mimic him, but your first stab awkwardly misses the target and nearly pokes your buddy's eye out. Oops. They say Roman fighting is about precision, not brute force. You have to get close enough to punch your enemy in the gut, literally. No glorious sweeping swings here. The goal, hit vital organs before your foe can scream ouch, or even blink. Between practice, the camp buzzes with rumors about upcoming campaigns. Whispers say you might march into Germania soon, a cold, wild land full of tribes that fight like demons and have names impossible to say after 3 wines. You wonder if these stories are exaggerations, or just creative ways to scare new recruits. In the afternoon, a group of engineers visits, showing off ballistae and catapults. These monstrous siege engines hurl giant bolts and stones like giant angry birds, designed to smash walls and scatter enemies like pins in a game of cosmic bowling. You're amazed at how these machines can turn a peaceful hilltop into a raining nightmare of iron and fire. Then you remember, one day, you might be the one loading the bolts. Fun fact, Roman artillery crews were among the most respected specialists in the army, and also, reportedly, terrible singers. Apparently, the constant shouting and whistling of war machines didn't leave much room for melody. Historians still argue whether Roman artillery was as effective as texts claim, or if some of their famous victories owed more to luck and timing than iron bolts flying through the air. As the sun dips below the horizon, you sit by the campfire, feeling more like a soldier and less like a terrified farm boy. Your gladius rests on your lap, a weighty promise of the battles ahead. You catch yourself imagining the clang of swords, the roar of crowds, and the smell of smoke mingling with sweat. Whatever happens next, you're no longer just a recruit. You're a piece of Rome's unstoppable machine. But instead of rest, you're dragged to the riverbank for a swim test. Not to relax, mind you, this is serious military business. You're learning how to cross water while wearing armor, a skill that will either save your life or drag you down to an early, soggy grave. You struggle with the larica hamada, that heavy chainmail shirt, feeling its weight pull you underwater like an anchor. Each link rattles against the next, a clinking reminder that Roman armor is less about comfort and more about survival. You kick furiously, muscles burning, while the centurion shouts encouragement, or threats, it's hard to tell. Water seeps into your helmet, makes your vision blur, and the cold bites deeper than any spear. Your lungs scream, but you manage to dog paddle across the river and scramble onto the opposite shore, soaked and exhausted but alive. The centurion grunts approval. Barely. This baptism by water isn't just physical training. It's a mental test. Can you keep your head when everything tries to drag you down? Can you fight when you're wet, cold, and miserable? Back at camp, you learn that water crossings have been crucial in Roman warfare. Julius Caesar famously crossed the Rhine with his legions, building a massive bridge in mere days to surprise the Germans. Talk about ambitious engineering. Fun fact, some Roman soldiers believed their chainmail was enchanted to protect them from drowning, which, if you ask me, is a hopeful but risky superstition. Historians still argue whether these water crossings were more strategic marvels or reckless gambles that could have easily ended in disaster, but they undeniably shaped the empire's expansion. You spend the evening peeling waterlogged boots and pondering what's tougher, the river or the life you've signed up for. You awake to the clang of metal on metal, the unmistakable sound of weapons training. Today, you're introduced to the art of swordsmanship drills, but with a twist. You'll be practicing with wooden swords called rudis. The idea is to sharpen your technique without turning your buddy into a pincushion. Spoiler, it still happens. Your instructor, a former gladiator with a grin that screams, "I've survived worse," walks you through basic footwork. You learn to pivot, parry, and strike while maintaining balance. Easier said than done when your muscles still feel like overcooked spaghetti. The drills push you into awkward stances, and you quickly discover that sword fighting is less about brute strength and more about timing and precision. A good soldier fights smart, not hard, the instructor reminds you, though his swing almost knocks your helmet off. Between exercises, you notice how the legions practice formations, lines so tight they seem like one giant blade. This unity is their real weapon, not just the swords or shields. You overhear a campfire tale about Decimus, a soldier who reportedly disarmed 3 attackers using nothing but his bare hands. Whether it's true or just a legend is unclear, but it fuels your determination. Fun fact, some soldiers believed that drinking vinegar before battle gave them courage and even protection against wounds. Whether it worked or just masked the taste of fear, you decide to stick with water. Historians still debate whether the Roman emphasis on disciplined formation outweighed individual combat skills, but no one doubts that the blend made them formidable. As the sun sets, your wooden sword feels less like a toy and more like a key to survival. You practice until your arms ache, dreaming of the day you might cross blades for real, though hoping to live buzzes with whispers about the upcoming march to the frontier. Your centurion gathers the unit, speaking in low, serious tones about crossing into hostile territory. This isn't just training anymore, it's the real deal. You notice a mix of excitement, dread, and tired resignation hanging in the air like a thick fog. Before you leave, there's a flurry of preparations, checking weapons, patching armor, and securing supplies. You see veterans repairing worn-out sandals with bits of leather and string. MacGyver would be proud. The Legion is an army on the move, but it's also a fragile organism, balancing strength and wear. The camp itself feels different, quieter, more focused. Everyone knows this march will test you in ways drills never could. You wonder what the forests beyond the horizon hold, enemy tribes, unforgiving terrain, or maybe just endless mud. Fun fact, Roman legions carried their own portable kitchens and tools. Each soldier packed enough gear to survive long marches, including their own rations and cooking pots. Talk about multitasking. Historians still argue whether the rapid expansion of the empire was sustainable or stretched the legions too thin, but marching orders don't come with pauses or second guesses. As you shoulder your pack and tighten your belt, the weight isn't just physical. It's the weight of the unknown, the history you're about to make, and the brotherhood you hope will carry you through. The drumbeat of the marching feet starts, and with it, the story of Rome continues. One step, one breath, one soldier at a time. The cold air biting at your cheeks as your cohort forms up. The ground is hard and uneven beneath your caligy boots, each step stirring dust and memories. The landscape shifts from familiar farmland to tangled woods that whisper threats on the wind. The march is grueling. You quickly learn that the Roman army isn't just a fighting force, it's a mobile city. Soldiers carry tents, cooking gear, and even tools to build bridges or clear roads. You lug your share, plus extra for the group. Your pack feels like a mountain strapped to your back. Each day blurs into the next, the same rhythm of footfalls, shouted orders, and the occasional grunt or groan. You've never felt this kind of exhaustion before, deep, bone-level fatigue that no amount of rest seems to fix. Along the way, you pass strange markers carved into trees, rumored to be warnings from local tribes. You can't tell if they're threats or invitations, but your gut tightens regardless. Fun fact: Roman legions marched roughly 15 to 20 miles a day, carrying about 60 pounds of gear. It's no wonder your feet hate you. Historians still argue whether such relentless marches were strategic genius or sheer cruelty, but everyone agrees, those who couldn't keep up got left behind, for better or worse. At night, the campfires glow like stars, and the air hums with whispered tales of past battles and distant homes. You clutch your gladius tighter, half expecting the shadows to come alive. The forest holds its secrets, and so do you. And the canopy above filters sunlight into mottled green patterns on the leaf-strewn ground. Your feet sink into mud in some spots and crunch brittle twigs in others. Every step feels like walking through a living maze where the trees whisper ancient secrets, some friendly, most not. You start to notice changes in the men around you. The initial enthusiasm fades, replaced by fatigue and growing unease. The novelty of marching wears thin when your boots are soaked, your shoulders scream under the pack's weight, and your body aches like it's been hit by a dozen chariots. A sudden shout breaks the rhythm: enemy scouts. Instantly, your blood freezes and your muscles tense. The centurion barks orders, and your unit snaps into formation, shields raised, weapons ready. The forest holds its breath with you. After a tense few minutes, it becomes clear that scouts were just local hunters. Still, the adrenaline surge leaves you shaken. This is the frontier now. Uncertain, hostile, unpredictable. You're introduced to the concept of ambush warfare, something Roman textbooks barely prepare you for. Unlike the disciplined clashes you practiced, ambushes are messy, chaotic, and deadly. There are no neat formations, only quick instincts and a fight-or-flight scramble through dense underbrush. Fun fact: Roman soldiers often carve notches on their shields after surviving ambushes, a silent tally of close calls and deaths avoided. Historians still argue how effective the Romans truly were at adapting to guerrilla tactics, but it's clear the empire learned hard lessons through brutal losses and clever adjustments. As dusk falls, you sit nursing a scraped knee, the sharp sting a small reminder that pain is part of this new reality. Around the fire, stories mix with smoke, legends of soldiers who vanished in these woods, swallowed by the land or enemy arrows. You wonder about your own story. Will you be a survivor or just another notch in a shield? The weight of uncertainty presses as heavy as your pack. Yet, despite everything, you find a strange comfort in the camaraderie. In the shared fatigue, the silent nods, the collective breathing of a unit holding fast in an unforgiving wilderness. The forest looms large, the night deepens, and the journey into the unknown arrives with the gentle warmth of sunlight. It crashes into your skull with the sharp bellow of a trumpet. Your back protests as you peel yourself off the cold ground. Sleep never really came, not with the eerie howls and rustling from beyond the perimeter. Today's task? Constructing a marching camp from scratch. That's right, before you can even think about breakfast, you're digging trenches and hauling timber. The Roman army doesn't just sleep in the wild, it builds a fortress every single night. A new camp, perfectly measured, perfectly square, perfectly exhausting. Your centurion shouts measurements while surveyors mark out precise lines with a groma, a sort of ancient crosshair on a stick. You help carve a ditch around the camp's edge, your muscles aching with each shovel thrust. Then comes the palisade, thick wooden stakes, hammered upright to form a spiked perimeter. It's like putting up a picket fence made entirely of medieval death. The camp becomes a hive of hammering, sawing, swearing. It's not just busy work. These camps are serious business, designed to withstand sudden attacks, wild animals, or anything else the gods throw at you. Fun fact, Julius Caesar was so meticulous about his marching camps that some modern highways in Europe still follow roads laid to connect them. That's right, you may have cursed his legacy last time you hit traffic in France. Historians still argue whether Roman camps were truly built this perfectly every night or whether soldiers, like anyone else, occasionally cut corners. You kind of hope so, or else you'll need a new spine by next week. By midday, sweat streaks down your brow, and blisters bubble on your palms. You swap sarcastic grins with your fellow soldiers. Misery does love company. Someone jokes that the real enemy isn't barbarians, it's manual labor. He's not wrong. Once the camp is complete, it actually looks impressive. A mini-city with rows of tents, cook fires, latrines, which you're glad someone else dug, and a command tent flying the Roman eagle standard. It's a symbol that somehow makes the whole backbreaking ordeal feel worth it. Later, as you sit chewing on dried sausage and lentils, you hear veterans sharing tricks for faster camp setup. One suggests tying your gear into bundles in advance, less thinking, more building. Another swears by greasing his shovel handle. You mentally take notes while pretending not to. Night falls, but for once, you feel safer. There's comfort in those palisade walls, in the neatly arranged tents, in the idea that you're part of something organized, even if it's an empire that makes you dig ditches for fun. You crawl into your tent, your bones sore but your mind a little steadier. Out here, where danger waits behind every tree, discipline is your strongest shield. And apparently, so is a really well-dug world wrapped in fog, thick and cold as milk. The air is damp, your cloak is soggy, and your mood isn't far behind. Breakfast is a crust of bread and some watery wine, Roman energy drinks, basically, and then it's back on the road. Today's journey leads deeper into tribal territory, and the tension in the air thickens with every step. The trees press in close now, heavy with moss and silence. No birds, no wind, just the sound of marching feet and your own breathing. You start to feel watched, even if you can't see by whom. Then the call comes, form testudo. The tortoise formation. You scramble into place with your unit, lifting your rectangular scutum shields overhead while others raise theirs on the sides. Suddenly, you're in a living tank of wood and iron. The guy in front smells like boiled onions and fear, but you focus on keeping your shield locked in place. This formation is legendary, used to protect against arrows, rocks, and other nasty surprises. You feel oddly safe inside the box, even if it's claustrophobic and your arms already cramping. The formation moves slowly, deliberately, like some kind of armored beast. Sure enough, moments later, projectiles rain down from the trees. Arrows thud against your shield. A few spears bounce off the formation's shell. You hear shouts, then the harsh clang of steel meeting steel. An ambush. The centurion bellows commands like a war poet with anger issues. Your unit holds formation just long enough for the cavalry to flank the attackers. The tribesmen scatter like startled deer, their yells fading into the woods. You break formation and catch your breath. That was your first real skirmish. Fun fact, the testudo formation worked beautifully in sieges and flat terrain, but was pretty terrible in forests or hilly ground. Some soldiers called it the slow death march when used in the wrong place. Historians still argue whether its reputation as invincible is overblown, especially since it required perfect coordination and discipline, things not always available under fire. You count yourself lucky. No injuries. A few close calls, sure. You notice a gash on a friend's arm, but he shrugs it off like it's a paper cut. Everyone's jittery, but alive. After the ambush, the marching pace slows. You pass burned huts and broken spears half buried in the mud. The Romans always leave a message, even when the conversation isn't finished. That night, the camp is quieter than usual. Even the usual snoring seems subdued. You stare up at the black sky and feel both smaller and tougher than you did that morning. Tomorrow, you'll march again, but there's no time for complaints. Today you're on reconnaissance duty. Translation: you're heading out ahead of the main force with a small team to scout the terrain and sniff out any surprises. Congratulations, you're now bait with a better view. Your team moves in near silence, every snap of a twig or rustle of undergrowth setting nerves on edge. The officer leading you is all squint and scowl. He's done this before, and judging by the chunk missing from his ear, he's got the scars to prove it. You keep your eyes peeled for signs of movement, bent branches, fresh footprints, the faint shimmer of spear points through the trees. Your heartbeat syncs with your footsteps, thudding like a slow drumbeat of anxiety and anticipation. Then you find it, a hidden trail leading toward a steep ridge. The officer signals to halt and everyone crouches. From your vantage point, you spot smoke curling from beyond the ridge. A village, maybe? Or something worse? You pull out your wax tablet and sketch a crude map. Roman scouts aren't just lookouts, they're intelligence gatherers. One wrong report can doom an entire legion. Fun fact, Roman scouts, known as speculators, were so valuable that some wore disguises and could speak local dialects to blend in. Basically, they were ancient undercover agents. And no, you don't get a cool code name, just more blisters. Historians still argue whether the Roman military's reliance on elite scouts was always effective, especially when operating in unfamiliar territories where local tribes knew the terrain far better. Your team returns just before dusk. The march back feels longer now that you know what's out there. As you report your findings, you can tell the officers are taking it seriously. Plans begin to shift. Paths are rerouted. Just another reminder that even a pebble's nudge can redirect an empire's footprint. As night falls, your fellow soldiers lean in eagerly to hear what you saw. Everyone loves a little gossip, even in a war zone. You down your rations while recounting the smoke, the tracks, the tension. You leave out the part where your hand shook so much you dropped your stylus. No need to ruin your growing reputation. That night, you dream of the ridge, of shadowy figures watching you from the trees. You wake up gripping your gladius, heart pounding. Just a dream, but then again, so is safety out dressed in gold and gloom. Sunlight filters through mist like a spotlight on unfinished business. Your report from the reconnaissance mission has set things in motion. Orders fly faster than arrows, a preemptive strike on the enemy outpost nestled beyond that ridge. You're part of the assault party, which sounds impressive until you realize it means you'll be charging uphill into uncertain doom while the rest of the Legion waits to clean up the mess. Standard operating procedure. Before marching, a priest walks through the ranks performing a ritual. He slaughters a chicken, yes, a literal chicken, inspecting its entrails for omens. Apparently, the guts say, "Go for it," which seems wildly optimistic. You try not to think about the fact that the gods might be winging it. The forest closes around you as you approach the ridge. The climb is steep, your calves burn, and your gear seems to have gained weight overnight. Sweat soaks your tunic before you even reach the top. Then, the signal, a horn blast sharp as lightning. You charge. It's chaos. The enemy outpost isn't empty, it's bristling with warriors who clearly didn't get the memo that Romans are supposed to win. Spears fly, axes swing, and the clash of iron rings in your ears. You lock shields and push forward in the classic Roman wedge formation, a living arrowhead. You see a soldier trip and vanish beneath the melee. You want to help, but orders are clear, forward or fall. Your training kicks in, and somehow you manage to deflect a wild slash with your shield and lunge with your gladius, the blade finding soft flesh. It's over in minutes but feels like hours. When the dust settles, the outpost is smoldering. You've won, but at a cost. A few familiar faces are missing from the lineup at roll call. Fun fact, Roman gladii were short and designed more for stabbing than slashing. They were brutally efficient in close quarters, especially when the goal was speed over flair. Historians still argue whether Rome's aggressive tactics won wars or just delayed the inevitable collapse, but when you're standing on scorched earth with blood on your armor, academic debates feel very far away. Back at camp, you clean your blade slowly, methodically. There's no glory in the gore, no triumphant music, just silence, and a new weight you can't quite scrub off. You don't talk much that night. No one does. But there's a look exchanged among the survivors, a flicker of respect, of understanding. You're part of something now, not just the Legion, but a brotherhood forged in damp earth and smoke lingering like a ghost from last night's battle. The camp feels heavier, less lively, more somber. The reality of your recent victory settles in like a thick fog. Some friends won't be marching with you anymore. Today is dedicated to medical care and recovery, which, in the Roman army, looks less like a hospital and more like a grim tent where bloodied soldiers moan and the scent of vinegar and herbs fills the air. You watch as the medicus, the army's surgeon, works swiftly with his tools, mostly sharp knives and cauterizing irons. There's no anesthesia, just steady hands and grim determination. The medicus tells stories about how soldiers used to apply crushed honey and even crocodile dung as primitive antiseptics. You laugh uneasily. Crocodile dung sunscreen, anyone? Fun fact, Roman battlefield medicine was surprisingly advanced for its time. They used bone drills, forceps, and even performed amputations with some success. Not quite a spa day, but it kept legions marching longer. Historians still debate how effective Roman medical practices were overall, especially compared to modern standards, but they undeniably saved many lives that would have otherwise been lost. You try to keep your distance but feel drawn in by the camaraderie and resilience in that tent. Injured soldiers crack jokes despite the pain, and even the medicus smiles once in a while. It's a strange, vital part of army life. The line between life and death blurs, and yet, hope persists. Later, you help carry water and clean supplies, feeling useless but grateful to do something. You wonder how many of these men will recover and rejoin the march, or if the next skirmish will claim more than just their strength. That night, you lie awake listening to groans and whispers, your thoughts swirling between fear, hope, and an odd pride in your fellow soldiers' grit. You remember the testudo formation from the last skirmish and realize survival isn't just about steel, it's about standing together, even when everything hurts, and the camp stirs with quiet determination. Today, orders arrive for a siege on a fortified village nestled at the edge of the forest. You're briefed on the plan: surround, cut supplies, and wear down the defenders. Siege warfare, the slow, grinding art of patience and persistence. As you prepare, you notice the engineers laying out ballistae, ancient giant crossbows capable of hurling massive bolts or stones. These machines are impressive, both for their firepower and the meticulous craftsmanship involved. The ballista operators joke about how they'd rather be slinging jokes than rocks, but their deadly aim speaks volumes. Fun fact: the Romans improved siege technology significantly, using captured enemy designs and inventing new machines. Some historians credit these advances as key to Rome's expansion, but others argue the legion's discipline was the real secret weapon. Historians still argue whether Rome's reliance on heavy siege equipment was a strategic advantage or a vulnerability, since these machines were cumbersome and required extensive setup time. The siege drags on. Days turn into weeks. Your daily routine shifts from marching to digging trenches, erecting walls, and maintaining supply lines. You develop a strange respect for the patient engineers who seem to work tirelessly, even when the enemy taunts from behind their walls. At night, the camp is a restless sea of whispers and plans. You catch yourself daydreaming about home, about simpler battles fought with less mud and more glory. But this is the real war, the slow war. One evening, a massive ballista bolt crashes through the enemy's wooden gate, splintering it. Cheers erupt from your camp, a spark of hope in the gloom. Despite the monotony, you're learning that victories aren't always about swift swords and loud clashes. Sometimes, they come from grinding down the enemy's will, stone by stone, day by day. You settle down that night, your muscles aching in new ways, your mind sharper with understanding. The war isn't just fought with weapons, it's a battle of endurance and strategy, and your hands are raw from hauling stones and sharpening stakes. The rhythm of camp life is punctuated by the distant clang of the ballista and the occasional scream echoing from the village. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed, but you push through. Discipline is your armor now. One day, a strange sight catches your eye, a soldier carefully placing pieces of bread soaked in vinegar around the camp. You ask what he's up to, and he grins, saying it's a trick to keep away the hordes of flies that swarm like little airborne pests of doom. This quirky hygiene hack is a reminder that even in the brutality of war, soldiers find ways to fight back nature's nuisances. It's not exactly luxurious, but it's effective. Fun fact: the Romans used vinegar baths and various concoctions to keep their camps cleaner than you might expect. They even had regulations about waste disposal, a medieval, leave no trace policy, of sorts. Historians still debate how sanitary Roman camps really were, given the scale and frequency of their campaigns, but one thing's clear: keeping healthy troops was a priority, even if it meant some odd remedies. As days blur into nights, you become acutely aware of the psychological toll of the siege. The waiting, the uncertainty, the endless labor, it wears on everyone. You find yourself replaying memories of home, trying to cling to sanity amid the madness. Occasionally, scouts bring news of enemy reinforcements, sending waves of tension through the camp. You realize the siege is as much a battle of wills as it is of weapons. One evening, as you sit by the fire, the older soldiers share stories of past sieges, of narrow escapes, cunning tricks, and stubborn resistance. You soak it all in, feeling a little less like a rookie and a little more like a soldier. The sun sets slowly, painting the sky in bruised purples and fiery oranges. You take a deep breath, steel yourself, and prepare to face whatever tomorrow brings. The war marches on, and so peeks over the horizon when a sudden commotion stirs the camp. Word spreads quickly, there's a council of war called by the senior officers. You hustle over, curiosity tugging at your fatigue. The centurion lays out new intelligence: enemy reinforcements are expected within days, which means you're likely to face a larger battle soon. The commanders debate strategies. Some favor holding the siege, others want to strike preemptively. You overhear murmurs about Roman tactics shifting from pure brute force to more psychological warfare, aiming to break enemy morale with noise, displays of strength, and surprise raids. Fun fact: Roman armies often used war horns and staged elaborate nighttime maneuvers to unsettle their opponents. One legend even claims they deployed wild animals to cause chaos. Imagine a lion roaring in the middle of a camp. Whether that's fact or myth, it certainly makes you glad you're not on the receiving end. Historians still argue about how much psychological tactics impacted Roman victories versus sheer military might. Some say it was the fear factor that truly made Rome unstoppable. Later, as you patrol the perimeter, you notice the tension has seeped into every corner of camp. Soldiers exchange uneasy glances, and even the usually brash recruits seem quieter, more cautious. You try to shake off the nerves by sharpening your gladius and checking your armor, a ritual that feels grounding amid uncertainty. At night, distant howls from the forest mingle with the crackling campfires, a reminder that the wild, and the war, never truly sleep. You lie in your tent staring at the flickering shadows, wondering how long this march will last, how many more nights you'll count like this. But tomorrow, you'll stand up again, shield ready, heart steady, part of an empire that marches forward no matter what. That seeps into your bones as the legion prepares for a night raid on a nearby enemy supply camp. The idea is simple: strike hard, fast, and disappear before dawn swallows you whole. Easier said than done, of course. You move stealthily through the shadows, senses heightened. Every crackle of leaves underfoot feels amplified. The forest around you seems alive with whispers and the distant hoot of owls. Your heart beats in rhythm with the crunch of your boots on dirt. The raid begins with the soft shout of the signal. You and your comrades rush forward, weapons drawn. The camp is surprisingly quiet, with only a few guards lazily patrolling. You catch glimpses of crates piled high, supplies, food, maybe weapons. You light small fires, just enough to cause chaos without burning the entire camp down. Some soldiers loot the provisions, others snatch prisoners for interrogation. The whole operation is over quickly, and before the enemy can react, you melt back into the trees. Fun fact: Romans were masters of such raids, using intelligence and speed to cripple enemy logistics. These quick strikes often broke the will of tribes who relied heavily on stored supplies to survive winter. Historians still debate how ethical such tactics were, especially considering the impact on non-combatants. But in war, morality often wears thin. Back at camp, the loot is distributed among the Legion. You snag some extra rations, which feels like a minor victory. The adrenaline keeps you awake long after the raid ends, but exhaustion finally claims you. As you drift off, you wonder about the lives disrupted in that enemy camp, the families, the children, the fears you'll never see. War is complicated, messy, and sometimes painfully unfair. But in the quiet moments between battles, you cling to the hope that maybe, somehow, this too will heavy pass. With the smell of smoke and burnt wood, a grim reminder of last night's raid. The camp is restless. The enemy's supply line disrupted, but retaliation is expected, and soon. You're assigned to the camp fortifications detail, reinforcing defenses against the inevitable counterattack. The work is tough, digging trenches, reinforcing wooden palisades, and setting traps. Your hands blister and your muscles ache, but there's a strange satisfaction in building walls meant to keep death at bay. As you hammer stakes into the earth, a grizzled veteran tells you about the invention of the adger, the Roman earthwork mound used in fortifications. This raised rampart provided both defense and a vantage point to rain down missiles on attackers. It's a clever mix of dirt and discipline. Fun fact, Roman camps were so meticulously designed and constructed that armies could build a fortified base in a single night. Imagine pitching a modern tent city faster than you can say, siege. Historians still debate whether the strict discipline behind these rapid constructions was natural leadership or enforced through harsh punishment. Either way, it saved countless lives. The sun climbs higher, baking the air and hardening the earth. You pause to catch your breath, noticing how the camp's quiet energy has shifted. Everyone seems to sense the storm coming. That evening, as the sky bruises purple and red, scouts return with news. Enemy forces have been spotted moving through the trees, closer than expected. You prepare for battle once again, heart hammering in your chest. The march toward survival continues, with tension and whispered prayers as the enemy closes in. Your unit prepares for a defensive battle just outside the camp, stakes sharpened, shields locked in the iconic testudo formation. You can feel the collective breath of your comrades, a silent heartbeat of resolve and fear. The enemy charges under the pale light of the moon. Spears hiss through the air, and the clash of metal rings loud in your ears. The testudo shields absorb the blows, and you push forward with the strength of unity. Your gladius finds its mark more than once, but it's the formation that keeps you alive. Fun fact, the testudo, Latin for tortoise, was a hallmark of Roman battlefield strategy, allowing soldiers to advance under a protective shell of shields. It was slow but nearly impenetrable. Historians still argue whether the testudo was a versatile formation or a last-ditch defense tactic. Some say it was more useful in sieges than open battle, but tonight, it feels like salvation. Amid the chaos, you catch a glimpse of the enemy's leader, a fierce warrior with painted face and wild eyes. You lock eyes briefly, the weight of the conflict crashing over you. In that moment, both of you are just humans caught in a war bigger than yourselves. After hours that stretch like days, the enemy retreats, broken but not beaten. Your body aches, and your lungs burn, but the camp stands. As dawn bleeds into the sky, you realize this battle has changed something inside you. The war is no longer a distant nightmare, it's your waking reality. You collapse beside a fire, exhaustion pulling you under. Somewhere deep, a flicker of pride lights up, you still humming from last night's fight. The camp feels different, almost electric. Victory has a weight heavier than defeat. Today, you're tasked with scouting for enemy movements, a job that keeps you on edge but sharpens your senses. Your small team slips through the woods, silent as shadows. The forest around you is alive with birdsong and the distant murmur of a stream, nature's calm contrast to the tension tightening your chest. Suddenly, you spot a trail of broken branches and disturbed earth, a sure sign of recent passage. You follow it carefully, moving deeper into enemy territory. Each step feels like a gamble, but the knowledge you gather could tip the scales in the coming days. Fun fact: Roman scouts often used elaborate hand signals and whistles to communicate silently. It was an early form of covert ops, without any of the cool gadgets we have today. Historians still debate how accurate and reliable Roman intelligence really was. Some say scouts exaggerated threats, others argue that without them, legions would have walked blind into disaster. As you circle back to camp, you catch a glimpse of a lone wolf watching from a distance, an eerie reminder of the wildness lurking beyond human control. Returning with fresh intel, you report the enemy's movements and numbers. The officers nod, adjusting their plans. Your role, though small, feels crucial. That night, you lie beneath a canopy of stars, the quiet hum of the forest a balm to your weary mind. You think about the path ahead, uncertain but unavoidable. In the darkness, you promise yourself to stay sharp, because the war isn't over, and survival demands nothing with a strange mix of anticipation and exhaustion. Your legion prepares for a march to a new front, following the latest intelligence you gathered. The road ahead is rough, rocky paths winding through dense forests and steep hills that challenge even the hardiest of soldiers. You trudge alongside your comrades, boots sinking into mud, packs weighing you down like anchors. The sun beats mercilessly, turning sweat into a salty stream down your back. The smell of pine and earth fills your nostrils, but your mind drifts, exhausted by the endless cycle of battle and movement. You overhear the camp's unofficial gossip about how Roman soldiers would sometimes sing marching songs to keep spirits high. The songs were reportedly simple but catchy, an early form of military morale boosters, though you're not sure your rough voice could carry a tune. Fun fact: some historians suggest that singing helped synchronize marching pace, reducing fatigue. Whether it was truly effective or just a distraction, it became part of the culture. Historians still debate how much these songs influenced morale versus practical training and discipline. Regardless, your mind conjures a simple chant as you step in time, finding a rhythm amid the chaos. The march takes hours, the landscape shifting from forest to open fields dotted with wildflowers and scrub. You spot birds darting through the trees, a small reminder that life goes on beyond war. By afternoon, you reach the edge of a new valley, where the enemy is reported to be massing forces. The camp sets up quickly, preparing for whatever tomorrow brings. That night, you share a quiet meal with fellow soldiers, the soft clink of metal and murmur of voices a strange comfort. You realize the war is as much about endurance and routine as about glory and battle, heavy with tension as the legion readies for a skirmish at the valley's edge. Scouts report that the enemy has set traps and ambushes in the dense brush ahead, turning the landscape itself into a weapon. You move cautiously, eyes peeled for signs of danger. The forest here is darker, the trees packed closer, shadows pooling like ink on the ground. Every snapped twig makes your heart jump, every rustle a possible threat. Suddenly, a volley of arrows whistles overhead. You duck instinctively, the sharp sting of a grazing wound reminding you that luck is as vital as skill. Your unit responds quickly, forming a tight line and pushing forward, shields raised. Fun fact: the Romans developed flexible formations to counter guerrilla tactics like ambushes. The manipular system allowed smaller groups to maneuver independently, an innovation that made their armies more adaptable. Historians still argue how often Romans truly adapted versus relying on brute force. Some suggest their famed discipline sometimes blinded them to unconventional tactics. As the skirmish intensifies, you notice how the enemy uses the terrain expertly, slipping through underbrush and disappearing like ghosts. It's a brutal dance of hit and run, contrasting with your heavy, methodical advance. You manage to capture a young enemy scout during a brief lull. His terrified eyes remind you that this war is a tangled web of fear and survival on all sides. After hours, the enemy withdraws, leaving behind a scarred forest and weary soldiers. As dusk settles, you tend to wounds and whisper silent thanks for making it through another day. The war is relentless, falls like a velvet curtain, and the camp settles into uneasy silence. You find yourself assigned to night watch, a lonely but crucial duty. The cold air seeps through your cloak as you pace the perimeter, every snap of twig or hoot of owl sending a jolt of adrenaline through your body. The darkness feels alive, thick with the unspoken fears of soldiers stretched thin by battle and fatigue. Your eyes strain to penetrate the shadows, trying to catch any hint of movement. The stars above are cold pinpricks, distant and indifferent. You think about how Romans used watchtowers and signal fires to communicate across vast distances at night, early warning systems in a world without phones or radios. The idea of sending messages through flames and smoke seems almost poetic against this silent, tense night. Fun fact: Roman night watches were rigorous, often rotating in shifts to keep soldiers alert. Still, many admitted to dozing off, relying on their comrades' vigilance to catch danger. Historians still debate whether night watches were more about tradition or actual effectiveness. In truth, the chaos of war sometimes made even the best plans fragile. Your mind wanders to stories of ghostly apparitions said to haunt battlefields, spirits of fallen soldiers seeking peace. You laugh softly, a dry sound swallowed by the night, but the thought lingers. Suddenly, a faint rustling in the underbrush pulls you from your reverie. You grip your spear tighter, heart pounding as you step toward the noise. A stray dog emerges, panting and scruffy, probably lost or abandoned. Relief floods you, mingling with exhaustion. You squat beside the dog, sharing a quiet moment of unexpected companionship in a world torn by war. As the night deepens, you feel the strange comfort of this small life amid the shadows. Tomorrow, the march continues, but for now, you hold on to this fragile peace, and you wake to the smell of burning wood and roasting meat, camp life's small comforts amid chaos. Today, the Legion is tasked with constructing a temporary bridge over a swollen river, a vital move to maintain supply lines and troop mobility. The river roars beneath you, swollen from recent rains, its icy current a reminder that nature often plays as fierce a role in war as any soldier. You and your comrades work with logs, ropes, and sweat, assembling a makeshift bridge strong enough to bear the weight of soldiers, horses, and wagons. You pause to watch water swirl and crash, wondering how many armies before you have been stopped, or drowned, by such a barrier. Fun fact: Roman engineers were legendary for their bridge-building skills. They pioneered the use of modular wooden structures that could be assembled and disassembled quickly, showcasing remarkable adaptability. Historians still argue how much Roman engineering prowess truly impacted their conquests. Some say their legions could march anywhere because of their infrastructure, others claim it was their discipline that mattered most. As the final plank is secured, you cross carefully, feeling the bridge sway beneath your feet. It's a fragile but vital link, a lifeline through a wild and unforgiving land. That night, you reflect on the delicate balance between human ingenuity and the raw power of the natural world. War, after all, is fought not just between armies, but with the land itself. You fall asleep to the gentle roar of the river, comforted by the knowledge that tomorrow's march ushers in a relentless sun as your legion prepares for a large-scale battle on open plains. The enemy has gathered their forces, and scouts estimate their numbers match or even exceed yours. The air hums with the low murmur of thousands of men readying for war. You find yourself swept into the triplex aces formation, the classic Roman three-line battle array. Front lines brace with shields locked, archers take positions, cavalry waits on the flanks. The sense of order amidst impending chaos is both reassuring and terrifying. Fun fact: the triplex aces was an innovative formation that allowed Roman commanders to rotate fresh troops forward, keeping pressure on the enemy. It was a tactical marvel that gave Rome a huge edge. Historians still debate the exact deployment and effectiveness of this formation in every battle. Some argue that its success relied more on the discipline of soldiers than the strategy itself. As the battle cry rises, you charge forward, the ground trembling beneath the roar of thousands. Spears clash, swords bite, and the air fills with shouts, grunts, and the metallic clang of weapons. Amid the frenzy, you spot a peculiar sight, an enemy standard-bearer struggling to hold his flag upright, fighting not just for victory but for honor. It's a stark reminder of the human faces behind the violence. Hours blur, but eventually, the enemy lines falter. Victory is yours, though the cost is etched deeply on every face. Exhausted, battered, but unbroken, you realize that this battle, like so many before, was won as much in the mind as on the field. You collapse beneath a tree, letting the sounds of triumph and mourning wash over you. Carries a bittersweet weight. The camp is filled with hushed conversations and solemn rituals as the legion tends to the wounded and honors the fallen. You help carry stretchers and clean weapons, the metallic scent mingling with sweat and smoke. You notice a group of medics working tirelessly with herbs and poultices, Roman battlefield medicine at work. They use techniques that would seem crude today, but in their time, these treatments saved countless lives. Fun fact: Romans often used honey as a wound dressing because of its antibacterial properties, long before germ theory existed. Some even believed crocodile dung had healing qualities, a fringe tidbit that sounds more like an ancient prank than medicine. Historians still argue how effective Roman medical practices truly were, especially during campaigns. Some claim their knowledge was surprisingly advanced, others say it was luck that most survived. As you assist a medic, you realize the fragility of life in war, the thin line between survival and death, held together by skill, chance, and sheer willpower. Later, you join a quiet ceremony where names are read, and silence fills the air. It's a reminder that beneath the glory and strategy lies the human cost of conquest. You lie down that night with a heavy heart but a firmer resolve, knowing the war will continue, and so slide into a rhythm of relentless marching and skirmishing, the line between friend and foe blurring in exhaustion. Your boots pound the earth, carrying you through villages scarred by war, fields stripped bare, and forests that whisper stories of battles past. You pass by abandoned huts, their smoke-stained chimneys silent now. The locals are scarce, either fled or hiding in fear. The landscape feels haunted, a silent testament to the war's disruption. You recall how Romans often built roads not just for travel but to move armies swiftly, roads so well engineered that some still exist today. The weight of that legacy settles on you, a reminder that the war is fought both in battle and through infrastructure. Fun fact: Roman roads were famously straight, cutting through terrain with ruthless efficiency. One theory suggests this was to intimidate enemies as much as to facilitate movement. Historians still debate how much Roman roads actually helped military campaigns versus economic expansion. Regardless, their impact is undeniable. During a brief rest, a fellow soldier shares a strange story about a legionnaire who swore he saw a ghostly figure warning of an ambush, a tale met with equal parts skepticism and nervous glances. You chuckle softly, but the story lingers as you gaze into the twilight, wondering what myths and truths intertwine in this endless war. Your mind drifts to home, to quieter days, and you wonder if peace will ever come. For now, the march continues, relentless and unyielding. You're part of a group tasked with constructing siege equipment, a complex and dirty job far from the glory of battle. The camp buzzes with hammering, sawing, and the groan of pulleys as giant wooden structures take shape, ballistae, catapults, and towering siege towers. You work alongside engineers who seem more like wizards, turning raw timber into terrifying machines of war. There's a certain artistry in their method, a combination of science and brute force that astounds you. Fun fact, Roman siege engines were deadly effective and often more advanced than their enemies' defenses. The ballista could launch bolts over great distances, while the onager hurled huge stones to break walls. Historians still argue how often Romans actually used siege towers versus relying on starvation and negotiation. Some say the machines were more psychological weapons, symbols of unstoppable power. As you lift beams and tighten ropes, you overhear a quirky tale of a siege tower accidentally collapsing due to a miscalculation, sending a legion of soldiers sprawling in a heap. The engineers swore it was just a test run, but the laughter tells a different story. The work is exhausting but necessary. Tomorrow, these machines will decide the fate of a fortress and countless lives. As you lie on your cot that night, your muscles ache, but your mind buzzes with anticipation. War is a brutal teacher, but today you've learned a new lesson: even in destruction, there is skill and craft. The battle for the walls looms, and so does your chance to witness history in the making. Thick with dust and anticipation as the legion moves to besiege a fortified city, an ancient stronghold rumored to be nearly impregnable. Your siege engines are positioned, and the massive wooden towers loom like giant shadows against the skyline. You can't help but admire the city's walls, sheer and imposing, built from massive stone blocks that have withstood centuries of assaults. The defenders are vigilant, their archers peppering your ranks with arrows. Fun fact: some Roman cities used a technique called opus caementitium, an early form of concrete that made their walls incredibly durable, a secret that allowed many structures to survive millennia. Historians still debate whether Roman concrete was a revolutionary game-changer or just one part of their success. The mystery of its long-lasting strength continues to fascinate experts. As the battle drags on, the constant barrage from catapults and ballistae creates a deafening roar. The ground trembles beneath your feet, and chunks of wall crumble and fall. At one point, a bizarre event unfolds: a swarm of bees from a hidden hive is unleashed on the defenders, causing chaos and forcing them to retreat momentarily. Ancient warfare was messier and more unpredictable than you imagined. After days of relentless assault, the city's gates finally give way. The legion pours inside, victory mingling with exhaustion and relief. You step over broken stone and shattered hopes, knowing this victory marks a turning point. The war grinds forward, but tonight, the city is yours. Your legion now faces the daunting task of maintaining order and preparing for future threats. The streets, once bustling, are eerily quiet, littered with debris and the echoes of recent battle. You patrol alongside veterans who share stories of previous occupations, how Rome often integrated conquered peoples by granting partial citizenship or establishing colonies. It's a strange blend of conquest and diplomacy, a strategy that helped hold the empire together. Fun fact: Roman colonies served as both military outposts and cultural centers, spreading Roman law, language, and customs far from the city's heart. Historians still debate how willingly conquered peoples accepted Roman rule. Some suggest it was pragmatic cooperation, others claim it bred resentment and rebellion. As you walk through the city's forum, you spot a group of local children playing with makeshift toys fashioned from broken weapons and scraps, a small, stubborn spark of life amid ruins. A quirky anecdote circulates about a Roman soldier who tried to teach a local farmer to use a gladius but accidentally sliced through his own sandal, proof that even the best warriors have their off days. You realize that war doesn't just reshape borders, it reshapes lives in ways both profound and subtle. As night falls, you ponder what the future holds for this city, and for yourself. The war marches on, but so feels fragile as your legion prepares for a forced march through hostile territory. Supplies are low, spirits are frayed, and every shadow seems to harbor an enemy. The terrain shifts from crumbling ruins to dense, thorny scrub that scratches at your arms and face. You move cautiously, alert to every sound. The wind carries whispers of danger, and the cracked earth beneath your boots seems to pulse with unseen threats. The air smells of dust and sweat, a bitter perfume of hardship. Fun fact: Roman soldiers carried standardized gear, including a caliga sandal designed for durability. However, these tough shoes were also famous for causing painful blisters, a minor agony endured in pursuit of victory. Historians still debate how the physical toll of marching affected Roman military effectiveness. Some argue the harsh conditions hardened soldiers, others believe exhaustion sometimes undermined discipline. During a rare rest, you spot a curious sight. A strange, improvised trap made from sharpened stakes hidden beneath leaves. It's a grim reminder that the enemy knows this land better than you. You silently dismantle the trap, grateful for the training that helps you survive, not just brute strength but attention to detail. As dusk falls, your unit finds a small clearing to camp. The sky fades to soft purples and blues, and for a moment, the endless war feels distant. You lie back, muscles aching but heart steady, ready to face whatever tomorrow's gray and cold as the Legion enters a fog-shrouded valley known for ambushes. Visibility is low, and every step feels like walking through a dream where danger lurks unseen. You move in tight formation, senses heightened. The fog muffles sounds, making it impossible to tell if that rustle is a bird or a hidden foe. The chill seeps into your bones, and your breath forms little clouds as you trudge forward. Fun fact: Roman commanders sometimes used trained dogs to detect enemies in fog or darkness, an early form of battlefield intelligence. Historians still debate how common animal use was in Roman warfare, but anecdotal evidence suggests these canine scouts saved lives more than once. Suddenly, a sharp shout pierces the silence, an ambush. Arrows fly from concealed positions. You raise your shield just in time, the hiss of missiles cutting the air like angry snakes. Your unit counterattacks, pushing the enemy back into the mist. The battle is chaotic, confusion reigning as friend and foe blend into shadows. In the aftermath, you find a curious object caught on a thorn, a small carved figurine, perhaps a talisman. You pocket it, thinking about the strange mix of superstition and strategy in war. As the fog lifts, the valley reveals its scars, broken branches, disturbed earth, and silent witnesses to the violence. You press onward, weary but alive, knowing this war is fought not just with steel but with nerves and luck. The road stretches out ahead, uncertain and heavier as your legion approaches a mountain pass rumored to be cursed by local legend. The air thins, and the path narrows, forcing soldiers to single file. The rocky cliffs loom ominously overhead, shadows creeping like fingers across the trail. You scan the horizon, feeling a shiver despite the sun's weak rays. Stories circulate among the troops of ancient spirits guarding the pass, punishing those who dare disturb their rest. Fun fact: Romans were deeply superstitious, often consulting augurs and interpreting omens before entering dangerous terrain, blending religion and strategy. Historians still debate how much superstition influenced Roman military decisions versus practical concerns. Sometimes, rituals serve to boost morale as much as predict outcomes. As you climb, loose stones tumble down, and the wind howls through narrow crevices. The silence is unsettling, broken only by the crunch of your footsteps and occasional murmurs from fellow soldiers. Midway through, a sudden rockslide forces a halt. Some swear it's a warning, others chalk it up to natural hazard. You just tighten your grip on your spear and press forward. A quirky tale is told about a soldier who tried to challenge the curse by shouting at the cliffs, only to be hit on the helmet by a falling pinecone moments later. Laughter echoes, lightening the tension. At last, the pass clears, revealing a valley bathed in golden light. Relief floods you, mingled with exhaustion and a strange sense of having touched something ancient and powerful. You rest briefly, savoring the calm before the next storm. The Legion enters a vast open plain where rumors swirl of a decisive showdown. The grass stretches endlessly, golden and swaying, as if the land itself is holding its breath. You feel the tension tighten like a bowstring. The enemy is close, too close, and the air buzzes with anticipation. The plains are a far cry from the rugged hills and forests you've endured. Here, there's nowhere to hide. Fun fact: ancient battles on open plains often favored cavalry and ranged units, but the Roman legions adapted, using their formations to neutralize enemy advantages. Historians still argue whether Rome's success was due more to superior tactics or the sheer discipline of its soldiers. Perhaps it was a bit of both. As you ready your gear, you notice a peculiar detail: wild horses grazing near the edge of the battlefield, seemingly oblivious to the coming storm. A reminder that life continues amid the madness. An amusing story circulates about a soldier who tried to tame one of these horses before battle, only to be bucked into a muddy ditch, much to the amusement of his comrades. The trumpets sound, echoing across the plain. The legion advances, the steady rhythm of boots pounding like thunder. Your heart races. The moment has arrived. The final clash is inevitable, a roar that shakes the earth beneath you. Spears, swords, and shields clash in a chaotic symphony, dust swirling into the air like a living storm. The sun beats down mercilessly, casting long shadows over the bloodied ground. You move as one with your comrades, shield linked to shield, trusting in the unbreakable Roman discipline that has seen you through so many trials. Every breath is heavy, every strike fueled by sheer will. Fun fact: Roman soldiers often fought with a short sword called a gladius, designed for stabbing rather than slashing, maximizing efficiency in close quarters. Historians still debate how much individual skill mattered versus formation and training. Was the legion an unstoppable machine or a collection of fiercely trained individuals? Amid the chaos, a moment of strange calm washes over you as you catch sight of a soldier on both sides pausing, eyes locking for a brief second, humanity flickering amidst the violence. Hours stretch like years, but eventually, the enemy breaks and flees. The Legion stands victorious, battered but unbowed. As night falls, you find a quiet spot and lie down, muscles trembling with fatigue and adrenaline. The war has taken its toll, yet here you are, alive and enduring. Now, as your eyelids grow heavy, you feel the slow pull of sleep, a welcome escape. Remember, even in the darkest nights, dawn is coming. You've journeyed through dust and battle, fear and courage, history and legend. The echoes of war soften into whispers, and the day's chaos fades into the gentle embrace of night. Breathe deeply. Let the sounds of ancient footsteps and whispered stories lull you into rest. You've traveled far, through time and terrain, and now it's time to let go. Dream of peaceful fields, of quiet rivers and star-studded skies. Know that history's tide will continue to flow, but for now, you are safe. Rest well, friend. Sweet dreams.